time. I am a little late on this because the last scene took a little bit of time to kind of engineer, set up, coordinate, and all that good stuff. But nevertheless, I still want to do this. I have to be honest, I am dragging ass. This has been somewhat of a long day, and I've been doing these all day since this morning, either researching the content itself that I wanted to have for today or doing the stories themselves. So this has been a long day without any sleep for the past few days. So nevertheless, I was interested in this when I saw this. I think it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, and I didn't get the chance to actually sit down and watch it. So let's do it together. Let's sit down and watch it together. This should be an interesting speech, and it was supposedly an anti-war speech that Tulsi Gabbard was putting forward. It's her launch speech. Tulsi Gabbard is launching her 2020 campaign. This was the speech that ignites that, and for some degree is going to set the tone and the message of what she's trying to get across. Christian Gillibrand was somewhat of a dud. Kamala Harris's was a complete dud, and so now we have Tulsi. Let's see if she can knock it out the park. And again, her anti-war campaign. This is big. Like, this is her distinguishing characteristic. This is the thing that distinguishes her from the other candidates that are in the race. It's something that she's been full-throated about. It's something that her policy agenda, from the standpoint of her on the federal stage, has shown her to be very, very hawkish on this idea of not having wars. I don't know, I'm using that in a weird turn of a way, but it still holds true. She's been holding power accountable, whether that's the conversation with Mattis. It's not a conversation. It's not really an interview. I guess it was a cross-examination of Mattis in the military policy of the United States in Syria. That was an amazing thing. I've used that video multiple times where she gets Mattis to admit that it's complicated as a euphemism for illegal, and that what Obama was trying to do in that area also was, you could say, quote unquote, complicated. But that ultimately she kind of make the strong point that you have no constitutional authority to be in those other countries. What are you using to attack these other countries? This is the most sane thing in the world that any particular person could ask. I asked that question. When Donald Trump decided that he cared about dead babies, and he goes and attacks Syria based on this idea that they somehow had some kind of chemical weapons thing, the first question that was raised was, what justification does the United States have to attack another country that didn't attack us? Regardless of what takes place in Syria, what are you using from the standpoint of law to just kind of initiate a weapon strike? The second point, you haven't even waited for an investigation. Meaning, even if you did actually care about it and tried to create some kind of justification for it, your initial premise of it is wrong. I like this aspect of her. And I want her on a debate stage to kind of bring this stuff up. I got to be honest. I don't think Tulsi has a snowball's chance in hell of winning. But it's somewhat of a moot point to me. I want the opinion and the disposition put on the debate stage. And I want her to push Sanders to the left on this issue. So let's hear the speech. I want Tulsi in this race. I like the fact that Tulsi in this race and all those people who are trying to push her out, go after themselves. Let's take a look at... Yeah, let's do it like this. I may flip between it on some points, but let's do it this way. This is Tulsi Gabbard's 2020 launch speech. This was a rather long video. I think it was like 2 hours because they were doing the entire launch party. In some cases, the people were, somebody was playing like a ukulele, somebody like all sorts of stuff. So this is going to be the speech. I'm not going through the entirety of the video. I don't need to do the entirety of it. I don't need to see the ukulele and all that stuff. I just want to hear the policy. I don't care about the other stuff. Show me the policy. So let's hear what Tulsi has to say. And before we start, let's... somebody sent a super chat, I think. You should live stream yourself taking a poll compass. Political compass? Political compass? Political compass? Poll compass? What is a poll compass? All right, let's listen to it. I'm not sure what a poll compass is. Show the ukulele after. I am not showing that ukulele. You can click on the video to see the ukulele if you would like to see the ukulele. But this is Tulsi Gabbard um, doing her thing. I'm going to kill the mic audio and let you guys listen.
Aloha, I can't hear you. There we go. Thank you all so much for being here. It's a beautiful day in Hawaii. Growing up here in Hawaii, I loved swimming and surfing and having fun in this paradise that we are so fortunate to call home. But I gradually realized growing up that I was actually happiest when I was doing things for other people, doing things to protect our water, to protect our oceans, our land. I felt that this was a different kind of happiness than anything else I experienced when I was just thinking of myself. It was a deeper happiness that stayed with me anywhere that I went. I knew then that no matter what path I ended up choosing in my life, that I wanted service to be that foundation. I'm proud to serve our country as a soldier. I'm a major in the Army National Guard, where I've served for the last 15 years. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to serve the people of Hawaii in so many ways over the years. In the state legislature, where I was elected at 21, serving over 100,000 people in the Honolulu City Council, and now, for over the last 6 years, serving in Congress. Thank you for your trust and your aloha. I'm truly grateful. Our nation was founded on the principle that our government should be of the people, by the people, and for the people, where all people are treated equally and with respect in these United States of America. But today, that vision seems like a far-off dream, where hatred and divisiveness have cast a dark shadow across our country. We're being torn apart by powerful, self-serving politicians and greedy corporations, people fomenting hatred, bigotry, and fear, inciting conflict between us because of the color of our skin, the way that we worship, or the political party we might belong to. This corruption of spirit is driven by greed and selfishness, and it is eroding the very fabric of our society and democracy itself. This is not who we are, America. The very best of our nation is exemplified by our nation's veterans, who embody what it means to put service above self, who've sacrificed their own personal interests out of a greater love for our people and our country. Because love is not just a feeling, it's a powerful force, a force that drives us to act, to put service above self. And our men and women in uniform, generation after generation, motivated by love for one another and for our country, have been willing to sacrifice everything for us.
I'm not a big person who's into fluff during speeches, if I'm being pretty honest. And I hate to interrupt her, but this thing of, level of service and all this other stuff, many of the people who get into the military do so because they're in economic straits, meaning they're having a hard time financially and they're looking for a way for financial means, not necessarily for love of country. I'm not saying that some people don't necessarily get involved because they want rah-rah, Uncle Sam. Let's be honest. A lot of what makes up our military are people who left to where they are, look at this as a way out, of somewhat of a particular situation. Just saying. Let's be honest. But whatever. I'm not a big fan of fluff, so, I'm heartless. Let's let her keep going.
They don't just raise their hand and volunteer to serve only to fight for one religion but not another, to fight for people of one race but not another, people of one political party but not another. No. When we raise our right hand and volunteer to serve, we set aside our own interests to serve our country, to fight for all Americans. We serve as one, indivisible, united, unbreakable, united by this bond of love for each other and love for our country. It is this principle of service above self that is at the heart of every soldier, at the heart of every service member. And it is in this spirit that today I announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America. I will bring this soldier's principles to the White House, restoring the values of dignity, honor, and respect to the presidency, and above all else, love for our people and love for our country. So I ask you to join me. Join me in putting this spirit of service above self at the forefront, and to stand up against the forces of greed and corruption. Now, the road ahead will not be easy. The battles will be tough. The obstacles great.
Forces of greed and corruption. What does that mean? Like, again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let's be honest. Greed is not a magical thing. Like, it's not this kind of mythical thing that just kind of pops into existence and all of a sudden, things just go to shit. Those things are kind of like gravity, where Einstein and, physicists are looking for gravity, and Einstein makes this argument that it's a contour of the universe itself, meaning space-time itself is contorted by mass, in which case that gives you a gravitational effect. Now, ignoring quantum mechanics for the moment, this is somewhat of an elegant model, showing that even when you don't think you're anywhere, you're always somewhere. You're always on the fabric of space. And in that fabric of space moves and contorts and so forth. Meaning, if you are on a large planet, the gravity around you is being contorted by the space within that planet. The point I'm trying to make here is the same thing is true in a political space. Greed is not this thing that's just existing in an ether. It exists somewhere. Something is taking place. Something is acting on it. You may call it a human emotion, but something is acting on that process to make that more advantageous than some other particular path. I'm making a point to you that this is somewhat of a systemic, structural thing. Greed is not something that's just in the heads of human beings. Yes, you can say it's in the heads of human beings, but it's in there because of the incentive that are being taking place within the society itself. You have a systemic issue. You have a system that is organized in a particular way to distribute funds in a particular direction that incentivizes people who are in a position to exploit. All the love in your heart is not going to do anything about a systemic issue if you don't necessarily acknowledge the fact that it's a systemic issue. Just saying. This idea of greed like it's a mythical thing and love and all this other stuff. Being an asshole, I'm sorry. Being an asshole, and I'm sorry. Let me go through the super chats before. I don't want to miss one. But I myself have broken up this stream. So, political compass test. I see. I'm sorry. Black leadership analysis 20. Black leadership analysis 19. No. Thank you, Black leadership analysis. I appreciate it. And I don't mean to continually interrupt her. I'm trying to be honest about the speech. These are not, I am a cynical SOB on this stuff. Tell me about your policies. What are you trying to get at? Some of this, must understand, Tulsi Gabbard has been hit brutally from the standpoint of her religious affiliation, meaning this kind of Hindu thing, the BJP. And because she's been hit by this, she's somewhat sensitive on this front, because this has been a very, at least significant, I don't know how much bang for the buck it got them, but it's been a somewhat of a significant hit piece. And you can imagine that when people start screaming about something, people start paying attention to the thing they're screaming about, whether it's had a bang for your buck or not. In this case, her religious beliefs and the people who she's affiliated with in a religious space. People have been calling them extremists. People have called them like terrorist groups and organizations, not to mention the association with Modi. This is a sensitive area for her, which is probably why she's spending so much time on it. So fair enough. Due diligence, I understand. Being in the position, you look at the world in a different way than your outsider position. We used to say you see everything from the side of the board. When you're sitting down on the board and you have skin in the game, the perspective becomes somewhat different from the skin in the game. So fair enough. Give her a benefit of the doubt. Let's go back to her. Let's hear her up. But all of this stuff about love and all this, it's not my cup of tea. But hey, I am not the entirety of the electorate. So there's that. Let's keep going.
But I know that when we stand united by our love for our people and for our country, there is no obstacle we cannot overcome. There is no battle that we cannot win. John F. Kennedy once said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." We must heed this call to action today, at a time in our history where it is so badly needed. We must stand up. We must fight for the soul of our country. Stand up against bought and paid for politicians who kowtow to special interests, selling their votes to the highest bidder. Where instead of draining the swamp, our president has turned it into a cesspool of corruption. We must stand up against big pharma and insurance companies who extort those who are sick, who put their profits above the health and well-being of our people. We have to fight to make sure that every single American gets the quality health care that they need through Medicare for all. We must stand up against the big Wall Street banks who gamble with our money and our future. Stand up against overreaching intelligence agencies and big tech companies who take away our civil liberties, privacy, and freedoms in the name of national security and corporate greed. We must stand up against those who pollute our land, our water, and our air. We must stand up against private prisons who are profiting off the backs of those who are caught up in a broken criminal justice system.
This is precisely my point. I don't mean to be a dick about this, but it's like all of these things are aspects of the system. Like, what do you mean stand up? What does that mean? What does that mean? And how are you standing up? Do you leave the incentives in place that allow those people to want to profit in that way? Meaning, if that incentive structure remains in place, remains intact, and if that systemic structure, if I'm right, and that structure is systemic, how do you fix that? Are you going to touch that hot rail? Meaning, are you going to touch the rail of the system itself? And what does that look like standing up to it? I love this part of it. Fair enough. Don't misunderstand me. And I'm giving somewhat of a, maybe not necessarily a cynical analysis of this, and I don't mean to. I'm sorry. Don't worry. It's just I am what I am. But this very specific point, this is kind of what I'm getting at. The people who are running in this race consider themselves Democrats. Great. All of these Democrats, for the most part, consider themselves capitalists, with the exception of Sanders, but Sanders is not a Democrat, as we're continuously told. So there's that. If all of these Democrats are capitalists, what are you going to do to try to change or tweak or contort the system in a way that people don't find it the incentives in the process for them to behave in the ways that you deem offensive? That's all I'm getting at here. What does it mean to stand up to all of this interest? And can you stand up to all of these interests if you don't deal with the system itself that propagates the reason why these interests are what they are? I could be wrong. I just want to know what that means.
A system that puts people in prison for smoking marijuana while allowing corporations like Purdue Pharma, who are responsible for the opioid-related deaths of thousands of people, to walk away scot-free with their coffers full. This so-called criminal justice system, which favors the rich and powerful and punishes the poor, cannot stand. We must join hands and stand up against those who perpetuate bigotry, hatred, and violence against our brothers and sisters because of their race, religion, or sexual orientation. We must stand up against this administration that claims to believe in America first, but who sells our troops, our weapons, and our interests to whichever foreign country is the highest bidder. We must stand up against those who dishonor our troops, treating them as political pawns and mercenaries for hire in wars around the world. We must stand up. Stand up against powerful politicians from both parties who sit in their ivory towers, thinking up new wars to wage, new places for people to die, wasting trillions of our taxpayer dollars, hundreds of thousands of lives, and undermining our economy and our security and destroying our middle class. Now, President Trump campaigned against regime change wars when he ran for president, but now he bows to the wishes of the neocons who surround him, clamoring for regime change wars that he claimed to oppose, this time in Venezuela and in Iran. These powerful politicians dishonor the sacrifices made by every one of my brothers and sisters in uniform, their families, as they are the ones who pay the price for these wars. In fact, every American pays the price for these wars that have cost us trillions of dollars since 9/11. Every dollar that we spend on regime change wars or on the new Cold War and this nuclear arms race is a dollar coming out of our pockets. Dollars that should be used to address the very real urgent needs of our people and our communities right here at home. We must stand united and stand strong against those in both parties who never tire of war. Neocons and neolibs who drag us from one regime change war to the next and who are exacerbating the new Cold War, pushing us to the brink of nuclear war. We deserve better. Our country deserves.
I like this. I like this rhetoric. It's unambiguous. It's very clear. We deserve better. And I love the attack line, right? I mean, the perspective of an American soldier who's out there doing what these guys essentially have ordered the military to come up with a plan to do. And her making a point that you are dishonoring our troops by putting these troops in the useless, wasteful wars. And this is not one of these things that's one party or the other. It's a bipartisan consensus that allows this to propagate itself. This needs to stop. Unambiguous. Very clear. Neolibs or neocons that are involved in this process. I love this. I love this. I love this. This is yeah, I love this language. I love this language. I'm becoming I'm getting to like this. Tulsi is not a strong political performance actor. That's true, Moto. I agree with you. Trump will beat Tulsi in 2020. I'm a conservative. I don't know about that. I don't know. I mean, yes, no, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. I would have to see her run in the race for a little bit longer than just her first thing. But I got to be honest, I love this line of dialogue and this line of conversation. It is the most natural line of conversation in the world. I mean, what are you thinking? You decide that you want to get into the military. Regardless of your reasons, assuming for the moment you get into the military. And at the end of the day, you're functioning at the behest of civilian control of that military. And they're using you as political pawns, putting you in one country after the next. We're fomenting a crisis situation right now in Venezuela, while simultaneously saying that the problem in this context is Venezuela. It is our sanctions that are doing this stuff. Let's be very clear. I'm making the point that she's right. From the standpoint of our troops in Syria, from the standpoint of what was done in Iraq, from the standpoint of the chaos that took place in Libya, in one place after the next, we have put our troops in places, not because it's defensive. To America, calling it Department of Defense is somewhat of a lie. Because offensive wars by people who were completely separate and distinct from the decisions that they were making. Meaning, despite the fact that they were saying that they wanted some kind of intervention in a particular area, despite the fact that some of this stuff was under the cover and using special forces and operations, they're unaffected by those choices. If those troops get killed, those troops get killed. It doesn't adversely affect them. George Bush went into a country that said they had weapons of mass destruction. They did not have weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You have 1 million people who's died in that. You have, 4,000 Americans, not to mention trillions of dollars that were spent for that. Nobody paid for that fuck up other than the soldiers that were in the process or went over there under this idea that they were doing something for the country that sent them there. Jeez, right. Let's keep going. Let's hear more of Tulsi.
Deserves better. Just over a year ago, the people of Hawaii and our country thought we were under a nuclear attack. We saw college students running frantically across UH Manoa campus trying to find shelter. Saw a father lowering his daughter down a manhole to try to keep her safe. Saw families who piled their children into their car and drove to the mountains looking for a cave to find shelter. A mother cowering in a bathtub with her children. A father trying to choose which of his children he would spend the last minutes of his life with. There was no shelter. There was nowhere to hide. Now, those of us who serve in uniform made a choice. We made a choice to put our lives on the line to serve our country, willing to pay the ultimate price. We volunteered for that. We chose that. But my 6-year-old nephew, Malu, he didn't make that choice. You didn't make that choice. Our families didn't make that choice. Our troops volunteer to serve our country, to go to battle, to defeat those who threaten us, to keep the American people safe, to make it so while they are fighting on the front lines, you and your children can sleep soundly at night. But as powerful politicians beat the drums of war and ratchet up tensions between the United States and nuclear-armed countries like Russia and China, the front lines have come to our doorstep as we sit on the precipice of nuclear war. The reality is, right now, there are over 14,000 nuclear weapons in the world, many of them far more powerful than those that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, enough to destroy the world many times over. Now, throughout the 20th century, during the Cold War with the Soviet Union, we were told we had no choice but to live in fear that at any moment we could be annihilated by nuclear war. Children in schools practiced reacting to a nuclear alert, hiding under their desks. Those who had money built bomb shelters. Those who couldn't afford it wondered if and how they would survive. And with the dissolving of the Soviet Union, that danger was supposed to have disappeared. But our leaders have failed us. Because today we face a greater risk of nuclear catastrophe than ever before in history. This situation is unacceptable. The president's most important responsibility is to serve as commander-in-chief. I will do so as a soldier who understands the seriousness of this responsibility. I want to take a moment to recognize and express our appreciation to our fellow veterans who have joined us here today. Please raise your hands and allow us to recognize you. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
You know, I don't tend to like the bathing in the troop stuff. But she's taken a particular twist on it that I actually do like, that I think makes more sense than anything else, because I used to always say, well, hey, can't you support the troops by keeping them at home? Meaning, if my cousin is in the military, I want to support him by not having military interventions and putting him into some hellhole that he may not come back, or at the very least may not come back as a whole person. That seems to be the most important, crucial way to support the troops, not necessarily put them in harm's way. I never understood why that wasn't the basic argument in this case. That seems to be the most straightforward thing in the world. And this is kind of the argument that she's making. I will function as a soldier, and I would look at the world through that lens to some degree, not necessarily looking for somebody's asses to kick, but more so how we can make peace and ratchet down the tensions. You had me at hello. You had me at hello. I love it. Let's keep going.
Vice. Those of us who have experienced firsthand the cost of war fight hardest for peace. I served in Iraq in 2005 in a medical unit where every single day I was confronted with the high cost of war and who pays the price. I take seriously the responsibility of securing our nation. I know that weakness invites aggression, and that our men and women in uniform stand ready to take on and defeat those who threaten the safety and security of our people. I also know that our current foreign policy is undermining our national security. It is depleting our resources and exhausting our military. As your commander-in-chief, I will work to end the new Cold War and lead us away from the abyss of a nuclear war that could destroy our world in mere minutes. I will build partnerships with other nations based on shared interests, leading with a foreign policy not based on conflict, but instead cooperation. I will end the regime change wars that have taken far too many lives, cost trillions of dollars, and undermined our security by strengthening terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And I will have the courage to meet with both friends and adversaries in the pursuit of peace and our national security. Because if we lack the courage to meet with those we disagree with, the only alternative is war. Now, bending the arc of history away from war and towards peace will require every one of us to stand up against the military-industrial complex and powerful self-serving politicians who have a vested interest in perpetual war. When I was deployed in Iraq, there was a big sign at one of the main gates to our camp. And that sign read in big block letters, "Is today the day?" It was a stark reminder for all of us that any day could be our last. From the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, I knew that that day could be my last. And it made me reflect. How am I making the most of the time that I have? This is the same reality that faces us today. We have no time to waste. There is far too much at stake. So the choice is ours. In order to make this change, every one of us must answer the call to put service above self, to put the interests of our country over our own. We're motivated by our love for each other and our love for our country. We will stand up, we will take action, and we will overcome. Now, love should not be mistaken for weakness. There is no force more powerful than love. It's love that causes.
So, I gotta be honest, I am a sucker for this type of language. And I know this sounds like I'm repudiating the stuff that I said in the beginning, like I don't want this flowery language, the politics. So, something about love, and I'm not necessarily sure why. Love should not be mistaken for weakness. And making a point that this political campaign is based on love for the country and stuff like that. That part loses me, this idea of love as a concept. But I think of that more so in regards to cooperation. I don't necessarily think that has to be this kind of romantic stuff. I shouldn't have interrupted. Let's let her finish. Let's let her do her thing.
Causes a firefighter to run into a burning building to save the lives of total strangers. It is love that drives a mother to run in front of a speeding car to save the life of her child. It is love that inspires a soldier to lay down their life to save the lives of others. It is love that inspires every one of us to care for each other, to fight for each other, to fight for our freedoms, to fight for our country. What our country needs now more than ever is the spirit of aloha. That spirit of respect and love for one another and for our country. This is the most precious gift that Hawaii has to offer to our country and the world. Aloha. Because aloha is so much more than hello and goodbye. Aloha means I come to you with an open heart. I respect you. I have love for you and I care about you. Whether you are a friend or a stranger, I come to you with aloha. Regardless of the color of your skin, where you come from, how you worship God, who you love, or what political party you belong to. Dr. Martin Luther King saw this power of aloha when he first visited our islands and addressed our legislature in 1959. He said, "We look to you for inspiration and as a noble example, where you have already accomplished in the area of racial harmony and racial justice what we are struggling to accomplish in other sections of the country. And you can never know what it means to those of us caught for the moment in the tragic and often dark midnight of man's inhumanity to man to come to a place where we see the glowing daybreak of freedom and dignity and racial justice. Now, after he returned back to the mainland, Dr. King said of his visit, "As I looked at all these various faces and various colors, mingled together like the waters of the sea, I could see only one face, the face of the future." President John F. Kennedy, he also recognized this power of aloha when he visited Hawaii in 1963. And he said, "We are proud of this city and this state and what it stands for. These islands represent all that we are and all that we hope to be." This is aloha. And this change we need to see must begin in the White House, because the White House should be a beacon of aloha, respect, love, and compassion for every American. Our nation was founded on the values and principles of putting service before self, rejecting the rule of kings who prospered from the sacrifices of the people, and forming a new nation founded on the premise that leaders should be motivated not to serve their own interests, but to serve the people. And deep inside the heart of every American is the love, honor, courage, and ideals that form the foundation of this country. Ideals that still shine in each and every one of us. Each of us and all of us must rise again now and come together for each other, our country, and the world. Our cause is to create a new and different path that reclaims our destiny and restores the uniquely American ideal: to seek a higher purpose, greater than ourselves, and to put service before self. That is the cause that is calling to every American today. So I'm asking you to join me. I'm asking you to stand with me to build a movement of peace at home and abroad that will fulfill the promise of America, of freedom, justice, equality, and opportunity for all. Thank you all so much. Mahalo nui loa. Aloha.
Tulsi, Tulsi, Tulsi,
Let it play out. Tulsi Gabbard, her introductory speech launching the campaign. All right. God, man, I don't want to be a dick about this. And it feels like I'm being a dick about this because I don't necessarily know the magnitude of the issue that I have with this video. Meaning, in the context of other people looking at this, I don't know how my compares. Like, if I'm blowing something out of proportion in this. I have to be honest, I look at this and my thought is, this woman is not going to be president, at least not in this campaign run. And my understanding, and let me explain why. As I watched the speech, there are parts of the speech that are radiant. When she's talking about the war thing, she's talking from a perspective that seems honest, straightforward, and it makes all the logical sense in the world. And is going to get a lot of people to latch on to that very specific aspect of what she's talking about. By the same token, she's saying this in a slightly robotic way, and I understand, it's a launch and everything else. And I kept thinking, like, what is this speech missing? What is this speech missing? What is this speech missing? Why do I feel some kind of way when I watch the speech? And the way I feel is something's missing. Now, it is fair that I am biased here. The horse that I'm backing in this race is Sanders, so fair enough. But I've been straightforward and honest about Tulsi Gabbard, and I think I've given her a fair shot, and I still do. Meaning, I still like her. I still want her to be in the race. I still want her to be in those debates and everything else, and she may change my mind through the contest, itself. Things change. But I think what I'm missing in this is the magnitude of the problems that she's talking about. I like this idea of this kind of larger spirit of purpose and everything else. This idea of community. Yes. But, and this is me. So, somebody else is going to look at the speech and come away with a completely different interpretation. This is based on my own needs, not necessarily in the objective world. So I want to qualify all of this. Fire. The speech lacked fire. And you may say, what the hell do you mean by fire? Did she, light a match on stage? No, not fire in that sense. I mean, to me, as I process the stuff, I think to myself, the magnitude of these issues are profound. From the standpoint of climate, we're talking about life on Earth, or at the very least, a shrinking of the habitable space in which we exist. When we're talking about economics, we're talking about like 40% of the American population not having basic living standards. Like you're talking about a large segment of the population just vulnerable, persistently in perpetuity vulnerable, despite the wealthiest country on the planet. Like you look at these things and you think to yourself, they're real people who are suffering at the blunt edge or the pointed edge of each of these factors. Because even though we're talking about them in this kind of conceptual way, these are real things that are adversely affecting real people, somebody out there somewhere. And those people, for the most part, are just like me, in the sense that I would imagine you think that they're just like you, and that you don't necessarily want them enduring bad times. And they give a speech like this. Like even for the militarism stuff, you're talking about spending $700 billion fucking dollars on the military, when that's like several times everywhere else in the world. You can cut the military budget in half, and it would still be twice as much as anywhere else in the world. And these guys are hunting people down in caves, like from the standpoint of private prisons, from the standpoint of this kind of bonanza that they're getting when Trump is pulling out of the INF. Yeah, INF treaty. These are big fucking issues. These are big deals. I don't necessarily see these things as being, I'm kind of wishy-washy about. These are big deals. And explaining to me that these are big deals to you in this kind of monotone way, it leaves something lacking. And it feels something to be false about it. Now, it feels something false about it for me because I look at these things as big deals. And as I look at these things about big deals, I get a little bit dramatic in the way that I see these things. So, from my own inputs, it gets wishy-washy. And I understand being presidential and everything else, but I would prefer a barn burner over this. Give me a barn burner any day of the week. Bring the house down. I want that crowd flipping out like in a frenzy and a rage, running about, pushing people. I guess I'm making the point that the magnitude of the thing that is facing you and the challenge that's facing you, I want something in you that gets you out of bed in the morning where you get out sprinting, ready to go after whoever. I'm going to tackle a person. That's how hyped up you are. My dog, Pitsu, sometimes he gets so excited he doesn't know what to do. He just bites whatever's closest to him. He's like, I'm so happy. That's what I want. I want that in a political context. But I guess my point is a barn burner over this any day of the week is going to get people kind of aroused to your cause. People do not necessarily change their mind in conceptual ways. They change their minds oftentimes through their heart center, meaning it's their emotional base that kind of changes and creates this kind of fertile ground for something else to take place. That's my feeling about the speech. It just feels like, it's like, I love the anti-war stuff. The ukulele was epic, but it leaves you, something's lacking, right? Am I wrong on this? She doesn't feel sufficiently earnest, full stop. Okay. All right. So I'm not insane on this. I'm not insane on this. The debates will separate the wheat from the chaff. Yes, that's true. I listened several times. All right, what did Jay listen to several times? Because Jay is usually a critical asshole, so I like to hit a critic sometimes. Tulsi 37, she has nothing to lose and should go balls to walls. Agreed. That I agree with. Which is why I think she's putting on this kind of unapologetic lefty campaign. Warren could eat her alive just saying Anthony Reyes. I get that feeling too. I've seen Warren give barn burner speeches. And whatever you want to say about Elizabeth Warren, if she is on a debate stage with, what is the guy named Schultz, they would have to have security restrain her from hitting him in the throat. Like, that's where Elizabeth Warren is on this stuff. So I have no beef with Elizabeth Warren at all on that very specific topic, because it's in her. It drives in her. It gets her out of bed in the morning. She's fired up about it. I've seen her give barn burner speeches. So it's not, she's a woman and she can't do this nonsense. If it's in you, it's in you. And I want to hear it. Let it come out. That's what I want. Like, we're not in a position where this is, this passive thing. The challenges that are facing you are fucking tremendous. And you're taking over the reins in this kind of time where it's chaotic. It's not a status quo. There hasn't been necessarily a reorganization of the center. So the system itself is trying to still in the process of correcting itself. There may be a left-wing deviation in the correction itself, creating a new norm from the standpoint of the left. That's what I want. I want a Democratic Party that is further and significantly to the left. That's the only other way you're going to get necessarily change possible without the implosion of the Democratic Party itself. Now, in order to make that work, though, I guess my point is this. There's an opportunity here. And I don't want the nominee putting people to sleep. I want the nominee getting people pissed off. Like, there's shit that needs to be done. In order to get that shit done and reorganize the center in this case, you gotta be someone fired up and pull people to your cause. People don't necessarily always associate their issues with the system itself. Oftentimes, we're living in an individualistic system where these people are somewhat atomized. These people oftentimes attribute it to their own self-worth of sorts. That needs to be yanked out of them to the point of their understanding that it's not necessarily you. Yes, you may be a fuck-up, but you may not be necessarily a fuck-up. And it could just be an aspect of the system itself in which you got a bad end. Like, I'm just saying, it's important. It's very important. She's too low energy. That's it. Sonic strains. That's it. That's it. Like, this is the woman that went to Syria. Like you said, yes, I'm glad you bring that up. That went to Syria and kind of made that point that we're gassing the people and all this other stuff. She's taken the smears of them calling her an Assad toady, a Putin puppet, all of this nonsense. Putin's chosen candidate. So she has it in her. Like, from the standpoint of a spine, it's there. But I expected a little bit, I don't know, just fuck, man. More energy, I guess. No, she is aloha. Tom Mott, yes, I get she's aloha. I just need her to be a little bit more, actually, I need her to be less loha. I need her more hi-ha. How about that? So she got to beat her chest to get your respect, Winslow? It's not respect, Winslow. No. It's not respect. She has my respect. My respect was there when she went to Syria. I respected her. If I wouldn't have respected her, I wouldn't have done all of these videos on Tulsi Gabbard, nor would I have done the video where she's on Jake Tapper or cross-examining matters over and over and over again. I respect the shit out of her. That's why I loved the fact that she was in a campaign. But from the standpoint of beat your chest like a Tarzan, I love the euphemism in this. I love the language. Yes. Yes. Taking respect out and changing respect to what does the politics demand? And I make the point that the politics demand a person of action. And that person of action needs to have a certain fired upness in them to get the necessity of the moment across to as many people as possible to get it across to. Call me an asshole for saying that, but I'll stand by that. I mean, there's a politics here. When Sanders gets up and gives a speech, have you been to a Sanders speech? Sanders gets up and gives the same speech for the most part everywhere he goes. And he just, policy. We can have a better world and all this stuff. But all of that's coached within this context of policy. We can have a better world through these particular policies. And yes, it trends heavily to the left, which used to be just the regular Democratic Party. But there's something to that about getting people pissed off and fired up, especially when you have a large segment of the population that is feeling pain. Like, that pain needs to be connected to a certain degree of action. And I like the fact of tapping that and attaching it to action and a cause. A low energy speech doesn't do it. It doesn't do it. I don't think it does it. She needs to channel her inner Howard Dean. Yes. Chase Scott. Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. If she's anti-war or hang out in the military. Well, I mean, people have different things for the military, but saying her inner Howard Dean, don't get insane with it, but don't start react. Don't do that. But come on, I'm not wrong here. This is a low energy speech. And you're in a time of politics where Donald Trump is the president of the United States. And what set for norm, at least from the standpoint of rhetoric, swung to the right. They had a front man for one right-wing policy after the next that they shoved through Donald Trump's gullet and fed it out to his masses for them to take on and own it as if this is indicative of anything that he was saying during the campaign trail. The Occupy Wall Street movement hasn't vanished. You know that, right? Like, this is not a situation where these people came out all that time for Occupy Wall Street and they're just like, poof, all of them were abducted by aliens and everybody just kind of, went about their way. Those people are still out there in the society itself. And I guarantee you that those people are still not happy with things the way they are. They just haven't necessarily had a way to express that rage. The anger is there. Use it. Why wouldn't you? And I mean, it's a righteous indignation of sorts. You have people who are living in the richest society on the planet, and they're living in a way that you don't or shouldn't necessarily have to live. That's all I'm saying. You have this, the highest employment number and all this other stuff, but people are still persistently vulnerable. A large share of the population persistently vulnerable, particularly around the world of these issues of color. Not just issues of color, because the majority of the people on welfare are white. Like, it is important to get this across, that this is multi-ethnic pain that is felt within the society itself. And oftentimes, like I said, people consider that as issue of them. My failure, my fuck up, my, whatever. That's not necessarily true. If you're in the society, yes, we as this government can provide a job. Yes, we can provide healthcare. Yes, we can provide all those things. Can you provide all those things in the context of there being, a proliferation of billionaires? No. You can't have it both ways. My point is, you make a choice. What is in the interest of the 99%? And make that choice and run with it. The perspective of this that I need to look at is specific to my own. I don't necessarily need to have to take the billionaire's perspective of things. I can take the 99% perspective since we are the majority. that's going to be affected by this. I guess I'm making the point, there's a certain energy that can be tapped into that makes it more invigorating and more visceral to the individual that's watching what you're doing. And to some degree, I would imagine if you're in politics, you should want to get people somewhat fired up and rallied to your particular cause. Yeah. Her inner Howard Dean. I'm just saying. I'll stand by that. I will stand by that. Tulsi is who she is. Meanwhile, Christian Gillibrand takes Wall Street cash. I actually like her, but whatever. I like her too! I like her too! I'm not saying anything wrong with Tulsi. Jesus fucking Christ. I want that to be very clear. I like Tulsi. It's not that I don't like her. It's not that I don't like her. None of this has anything to do with me not like her. I'm just saying, this speech was just a little low energy. Anthony Reyes, digital tyranny spot on. What did digital tyranny say? Kamala is a female Joe Arpaio. Yeah, right? She calls herself a progressive prosecutor. It's like, whatever, man. Whatever. Progressive prosecutor, my ass. Keeping people in prison in order they can fight fires for like 8 cents on a dollar is not what I consider progressive. Merced Cali. JT, do you think that overstacking the deck this cycle so that no one will get a majority, so supermajority will decide it again? That's an interesting thing that I've heard. But to be honest, all of this is explained purely through self-interest. Like, from this, think of it from the, not necessarily from a party perspective. Imagine it purely from the perspective of the individuals that are in the process itself, meaning that are in the race. They think Donald Trump is a vulnerable candidate. And in thinking he's a vulnerable candidate, each one wants to be president. Each one is functioning not in the interest of the whole, but purely from their own interests. And some of this is to some degree is going to be cutthroat. The ones that have the central advantage in this, name recognition, people who can attach something to them, ideally something positive. So Bernie Sanders is somewhat earnest and honest, and he's a socialist. That's what everybody knows of Bernie Sanders. Elizabeth Warren, again, hates bankers, etc., etc. So I don't necessarily think anyone is stacking the deck per se. Each one of these people are functioning in their own self-interest. Each one thinks that they can get something out of the process of running in the race, either name recognition or actually may have a shot at trying to get further into the primaries. Particularly Kamala Harris. I know some people on this channel was like, yeah, she's not going to win. I would not short Kamala Harris. I'm just saying they are pushing her extraordinarily hard. And whatever we want to think of new media, mainstream media, for the most part, still sets the agenda of the day. Overly emotional behavior doesn't affect me. I hate it. Logic and common sense, it does. I think you're dead wrong. If you still have a good argument, that's all you need. Stuff you're Howard Dean. Oh, oh, I love this. Wait, I missed your super chat. I love you, brother. I got that one. Thank you. Back at you. She doesn't feel sufficiently earnest. Full stop. Cure the immortal. I keep messing it up. I'm going to call you the immortal. Trump would beat Tulsi in 2020. I'm a conservative. I don't know that. Tulsi is not a strong political performance actor. That part may be true. In fact, her problem maybe she's too earnest, if that's a thing. All right, so I have pushback on my perspective on this. Fair enough. California and New York already owned by DNC. Kamala Harris will win them. Tulsi has no chance. It doesn't talk about clash. It needs to watch some David Harvey, Richard Wolff, or Vanis Varoufakis. Tulsi feels like a diet version of Nina Turner. Yeah. Okay. Yes. People may push back on that perspective of her not having a little bit more fire, but I'm just saying. This idea of I have logic. I'm pure logic, is like you're Vulcan. Even Vulcans were somewhat emotional creatures. I mean, this whole idea that people use pure logic and all this other stuff in order to choose. No, they choose. I mean, there's an emotional push in a particular direction, and the logic faculties come in to explain the emotional push in a particular direction. I mean, for this thing of being objective, I'm always dodgy about people who say they're being objective. They're being objective to the degree they can be objective. So, even if this one random individual uses quote-unquote logic in order to make those choices. He is not indicative of the rest of the population that is going to be paying attention to these ads and who you need to get involved in the process. Your logic is nice, but if you want to win in politics, do what you need to do to win. Just saying. You can discuss this as if the liars and the cheaters and the blue fascist party is not going to rig it for Kamala. No, Trina, I'm saying from the standpoint of them, of anybody rigging it in a way where you're talking about stacking the deck, there doesn't need to be anything over top of that. The individuals that are in the process stack the deck against themselves because, you know, they believe either they can win or there can be some kind of transactional politics in the process. I mean, maybe you lose, but maybe when you leave, the person that does win gives you a seat, maybe as Secretary of State or something. Who knows? They're in it because they think either they can win it or they can get something out of it. It's purely incentive of self at that point. You don't need anything else. Now, from the standpoint of will the DNC rig it or something to that effect, that's a whole nother animal. Like, you know, they still haven't owned up to the fact that they rigged the last primary. So there's that. Yet people even consider Tulsi. Well, keep in mind, they consider Tulsi because of all of the candidates. She's the anti-war candidate. That's why. That's why. I mean, if you're looking at, when people talk about Tulsi Gabbard, they talk about the other aspects of the platform, but what you hear them talk about, oh, she's a Putin puppet, she's an Assad apologist, all of these things deal with issues of war. The things that she would want to do, in effect, on the country itself are somewhat, you know, different than the bipartisan consensus on war. After all, these guys just voted to keep us in Afghanistan, something Trump that was doing that was right. That was completely right. I'm bringing those troops home. I'm giving them a ticker tape parade and I'm bringing them home. And Congress voted to vote him down. Vote him down. Tulsi is organic Nina Turner. Look, I like Tulsi. I don't dislike Tulsi at all. And I like what's coming out of her mouth. I like what she's saying. But if you are asking me if I like to be riled up a little bit, then yeah, I like to be riled up. Now, I'm not saying that's an absolute for everybody. So I even prefaced the entirety of the conversation that said this is specific to me. I can't necessarily say how everybody else would approach this. Some people may look at this in purely, you know, kind of a clinical way and say, I like the points that you hit in the speech, etc., etc. But if my dog is hit by a car, and I watch my dog hit by a car, like if I'm walking out the house and he gets hit by a car, and the guy is on his cell phone that hits my dog, what is my response going to be? Like, what is the most human response in the world at that point, based on, you know, culture and society and everything else? Meaning, based on what our society allows of me in ways to respond, where people would say, yeah, that's somewhat of a natural reaction. I can totally understand why the person would do that. It's kind of cultural phenomena of our responses. What would be most appropriate? Would it be most appropriate to say, you know, in this kind of bland way, hey, that's my dog, and then walk out and tell the guy, dude, I think you hit my dog, in this kind of very calm, dispassionate way? Or am I going to flip out? Like, I care about my dog greatly, I'm going to flip out. Me flipping out is the most natural response in the world, considering he just hit my fucking dog and he was on his cell phone when he did it. And yes, even though every so often I use my cell phone when I drive, I have never hit a dog, so, you know, fuck this guy. That type of stuff. This is going to be somewhat of a bad response because I'm going to flip the fuck out. I guess my point is this. If you're faced with these very large problems, and people acknowledge and admit that these things are problems, and in your platform that you've given this kind of smorgasbord of lefty politics, where you're saying, I'm going to do all of these things, or at the very least, goddammit, I'm going to try, I'm Tulsi Gabbard, including cut the military budget. Great. Oh, Jesus Christ, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, Jesus Christ, I've lost my train of thought. I guess my point is, if Tulsi Gabbard is going to say that she's going to do all of these things, is it a big deal or not? Meaning, are those things a big deal? That's what it was. Are these things a big deal? Climate change, where you're talking about the end of human civilization. Poverty, where 40% of the population is persistently vulnerable. I would say that your reason for having Trump is probably more so there than a Democratic, than anything else. I mean, the two issues by itself are fucking dramatic. I mean, dealing with the poverty issue deals with dealing with the structure of the system itself. And if not trying to paper over it in some other way, that's also going to be bound to fail when people try to find a way to get around that also. Dealing with the climate change thing, again, fucking dramatic. Both of these issues, just by itself, what is the response supposed to be? I mean, you're saying that you care, you're doing this for love, and the people within the population are being exploited by a billionaire class. Do you deal with that issue in this kind of passive tone, or do you deal with this issue as being the advocate for the people who which you're kind of bringing this issue up for? I guess I'm just making the point, poverty bites. And if you, as a presidential nominee, are going to kind of push back on this, I don't know. I guess wish there was a little bit more gusto in that. And you know what I mean? I want there to be, fuck, man. Like, I don't want it to be this thing of, I don't want this to be an intellectual pursuit. Like, I care about this in this kind of intellectual area way. No, I want this to dig in the individual itself. This bites into me, and because this bites in me, I want to bite back at somebody else. I mean, look, like I said, this is just me and how I perceive this stuff. So take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. Call me Dracula, live stream and Paul Compass. Call me Dracula. All right, I'm going to call you Dracula. Rather immortal. I call you Dracula, fair enough. I vote for Tulsi in the primaries. If it becomes the Tulsi or Harris, I'll write in Edward Snowden. I would vote for Tulsi. I'd vote for Tulsi. I mean, look. I like the anti-war stuff. I like her platform. If it's between Tulsi and Kamala Harris, it's not a difficult choice for me. Sanders is the dog in the race that I am going with, and I am sticking with that dog in the race. But beyond Sanders, maybe Warren, maybe Tulsi. But with all that being said, I'm just kind of making a point. Yes, I like her, but yeah, call me an asshole. I'm just saying. It's just these issues are big, and in order to tackle these things, I kind of want a little bit more fire in the person, that's all. All right, I'm going to end this. I don't blame her for tone. I blame her for not telling her plan. Yes, I know it's unjust wars, blah, blah, fucking blah, what's the plan? Yeah, I know, right? It's like, what's the policy? What's the policy? What's the policy? That's the aspect of the left that I love. What's the policy? Just give me the policy. All right, I'll end this here. Thank you all for the supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it, guys. Yeah, this is going to be an early night. Merced, Callie, Dracula, Arcad the Immortal, Black Leadership Analyst. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your help. If you guys enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. And